We're at the South Carolina Water Resources Conference, and I am talking with Professor Michael Childress. He is a biologist and he teaches behavioral ecology, but we're going to talk first of all about some of his research about the blue crab, one of my favorites to ingest. And welcome, Professor Childress.
Thank you very much.
I want to ask you, first of all, when we talk about climate change, probably the last thing that many of us think about are the crab and the bottom dwellers. Tell us, first of all, what is going on with the crabs and why climate change is having an impact.
So blue crabs rely on a healthy marsh ecosystem. And one of the most important components to a healthy marsh ecosystem is a constant input of fresh water that comes from our rivers. And what we have found in our research about blue crabs is that blue crabs like marshes that have a proper salinity, that there's a preference for sort of a mid-salinity where they do best, and that is jeopardized when we go through periods of drought. And this causes the salinity profile to change, and it also changes how well the crabs are doing.
Mm-hmm. And then in terms of trying to bring in and make connections, as we do try to do in terms of ecological systems, animal behavior. What does the crab do when there are issues that it detects?
Well, the crab's life cycle is cued by different salinities. So when they arrive as larvae, they settle in the high salinity parts of the marsh down in the lower reaches of the streams. And then as they grow, the juveniles migrate upriver into lower and lower salinities. And in fact, as they mature, they mate way upstream in low salinity waters. But that doesn't end the journey. The females then have to migrate all the way back down the rivers to release their larvae. And so where they stop to mate is determined by the salinity in the river. And during times when drought occurs, they have to go further and further upriver to reach their optimal salinity.
They are very fine-tuned animals, and unfortunately I haven't been thinking of them that way, as similarly to the spiny lobster, which is another element that you've been doing some research on.
That's true. Spiny lobsters, which occur in the Florida Keys and the shallow estuaries at the tip of South Florida, rely on a healthy habitat that's rich with sponges and seagrasses, etc. And what we see in South Florida is droughts have been causing die-offs of those habitats, where loss of seagrass, loss of sponges, and as a result, the juvenile lobsters are more vulnerable to predators without those healthy ecosystems being intact. So.
I see. And then with some of the modeling work that's been done, I know that there's been quite a bit of work done in the Ace Basin. Tell me about that and what that actually is measuring and what you envision that might do to ensure that our population of blue crabs, as well as the spiny lobster, if that model works there, that they continue to populate and to spawn.
So the model that we developed for the blue crabs using data from the Ace Basin examined the positive aspects of high salinity and the negative aspects. And it turns out that when water is too salty, crabs experience an increase in disease. And when water is not salty enough, crabs experience higher predation from freshwater predators like alligators. And so what's interesting is during drought years, crabs tend to decrease in low flow rivers because of more disease, but they simultaneously increase in high flow rivers because of less predation. And so this is interesting because with crabs responding both positively and negatively to changes in salinity, we needed a model so that we could integrate all of those effects on the crabs in terms of what the overall effect of a change in salinity would be. So what we've done is we first built this model and collected data in the ACE basin to make sure that the model had the right parameters in it. And then what we've been doing is we first used the model to see how well could we predict the blue crab landings in the past, knowing the freshwater flow that entered the ACE basin. And we found that we did a pretty good job being able to keep track of when the crab landings went up or when the crab landings went down, just by keeping track of how much water was going into the ACE basin. With that, then what we're doing now is looking for ways to take forecasts for what the future might hold in terms of freshwater flow into the ACE basin, and then extrapolate what will happen to the landings for blue crabs in the future. So will crab landings go up, or will they go down, or how much will they fluctuate as climate changes?
Amazing. Now, I imagine that the fishing and the seafood industry is very interested in the results of this work.
Right, and we've been working very closely with the fishermen. They're our best eyes in the field. They know when there's a change in salinity. They know whether the crabs are there or not. So some of our work has been to collaborate with fishermen to help us take data in the field about where the crabs are and at what salinities. But the trickier part is knowing what's going to happen with our rainfall in the future. Are we going to have more rain but less freshwater flow in our rivers? And obviously, many of the presentations at the meetings here right now are discussing just that. What will the forecast be for the future in terms of river flows? And that's going to matter a lot for crab fishermen.
And I imagine likewise in terms of sea level rise.
Yes.
That would have a major impact as well.
It will also have an effect on crabs. And again, that will depend on whether it's a high or low flow river. So high flow rivers like the Edisto and Savannah, sea level rise will help the crabs. But low flow rivers, it will be detrimental to the crabs.
Right.
Yeah.
And in terms of the state agencies, I assume that maybe you can work on this gnat I've got flying around, figure out what's going on with it. But in terms of the state agencies that are interested in this type of work, I mean, it seems like it would vary because you've got the hospitality industry for people like me, and then you've got Department of Agriculture, Department of Natural Resources, DHEC, all of those, I assume, would have a...
Yes, and the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources held a workshop this past year on crustaceans in general, and they invited participants from lots of those different agencies and scientists as well to set up some priorities for where we need to focus our research to sort of help out our understanding of crustacean resources in South Carolina. And they were very interested in the approach of using a combination of field observations and then building predictive models to help us plan for future climate change.
Wonderful. Well, there's a lot of good work going on, but before I let you go, I do have to ask you, in just very general terms, because the crab is such an unusual looking animal. Tell me about the little flappers. And also, are those really their eyes in the front? and how they sense things around them.
So crabs are, they do have eyes right there in the front, but the sense organ that they have that's exceptionally well developed that we sort of lack is their nose. And they have an incredible sense of smell. And if you think about where crabs live on the South Carolina coast, the water's not very clear.
Right.
And so they mostly are wandering around following their nose to find food, to find mates, to know where the right kind of habitat they're in. And in fact, that nose is also their sense of taste, and they're probably tasting the water and identifying what salinity they're at. So that's something that is a little bit different. those paddles are a modified walking leg that creates a swimming appendage. And of course, the scientific name, Calanectes sapidus, means savory swimmer, beautiful swimmer. And it's named for that amazing ability to get up in the water column with those paddles and swim along in the water flow. So.
Amazing. What a wonderful job you have. I can tell you love it.
Thank you.
Well, it's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I've been speaking with Michael Childress. He is a professor of biology at Clemson University, and we've been talking about the blue crab and climate change impacts on the blue crab. For the Jim Self Center on the Future, I'm Donna London.